Search WICR and like us on Facebook. Facebook.com/WICR Iona College Radio. This is WICR.
All right, and we're back, guys. So want to talk a little bit about also the whole NBA All-Star game that happened this past weekend on Sunday, and with the news that Carmelo Anthony finally shut it down. Is going to have knee surgery. He's going to be out about 6 to 8 months. So he should be back hopefully in time for the start of training camps for fall of 2015. But to me, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of people saying, well, why should he have even gone and played in the game? He played 30 minutes. Was it the best choice? To me, the Knicks weren't going anywhere anyway this season. So what does it really matter? I understand that it was at the Garden. It was in his building. He wanted to play. I think that personally, he wanted to show. I think he wanted to show a sign of good faith to the fans too, just to show that he was out there and playing. Because really, if he knew he was going to get the surgery and knew it wasn't, going to hurt him in the long run, then he wouldn't have played. I think if he knew that this surgery was something that was going to be debilitating and potentially dangerous, if he had gone out and played, even for 2 minutes, he wouldn't have done it. I think he's smart enough to know that. But, when you have that kind of energy and you have that kind of, exposure with Madison Square Garden, his home court, getting the All-Star game, that's a big deal. It was kind of like when Matt Harvey started the game for the All-Stars 2 years ago at Citi Field. It builds up momentum and it gets guys going. And Melo, for all the the slack he gets and for all and all the bad talk he gets, he's not a bad guy. Is he a guy that rises to the occasion like a Kobe or a Michael or LeBron? No, he's not. He's definitely one of the top stars in the game, but he's not that kind of guy that has that second gear. I think we know that by now. That's why the Knicks really have to make it imperative for this offseason to go out and establish and acquire guys that will be complementary players to him. And not necessarily all, stars, because you don't have to have a group of stars. Look at the Hawks. The Hawks have had, they had 3 or 4 All-Stars this year, and none of them are huge stars. They just have good complementary players on this team that are playing unselfish basketball, that play both ends of the court, are playmakers, distribute, and take the shots when needed. And they have good shooters. So Melo can't take the brunt of it on his own. I was hearing Chauncey Billups the other day on ESPN Radio talking about how, when he was with Melo, he had his role. His role was to, him being Chauncey Billups, was to control the locker room, was to, facilitate any needs that any of the players had. He was kind of like the captain almost of the team. But he still said that Melo was the best player on the team, and that's obvious. So if you let Melo be Melo and you let him do his thing, you let him play his game and not worry about the other outside distractions, I think that'll take a lot of pressure off of Melo, because Melo's just not that type of guy, and it's no fault of his own, but some guys just don't have that innate ability to go out and, be a leader amongst men. He leads by example on the court. He leads by his play, but he's not a rah-rah guy. He's not the kind of guy that's going to take them 5 minutes before game time and give them, pep talks and really, hype them up. That's why I think the Knicks won 54 games 2 seasons ago, was because you had guys like Jason Kidd and Rasheed Wallace and Camby and Thomas. You had guys that were veteran guys that have been to playoffs and finals and won finals, so they know what it took. So they took a lot of pressure off of Melo, because Melo was able just to go out and lead by example and to play his game, which is scoring. So to me, having him this year and basically having to take the brunt of everything and basically being the main veteran on the team along with being the best player, I think took a lot out of Melo and a big toll, because you could tell that he was kind of exhausted and tired and just didn't seem to have that same tenacity that he had in past years. And again, age plays a part in that too, because he is 30. So, some of his years are, best years are going behind him. But that's not to say that if you have a healthy Melo with good complementary players around him, maybe one more good star on the team, that he can't win, that he can't be, on a winning team. And I don't take any of that argument that he's not a winning player and he can't be on a winning team. I don't take any of that for at all in light, because he won with Syracuse. Now I know that was years ago, but he still won, led them there, and he's been on playoff teams pretty much every single year he's been in the NBA, except for 1 or 2. But he hasn't taken that next step, and that's what everyone's expecting for him. That's what everybody wants him to do, is get to that, get to the finals and and show what he can do there, because obviously that's kind of a measure of a player's value, and it's a measure of how successful they are. It was with championships. Although you look at guys like Carmelo and John Stockton, who never won, Charles Barkley, and they're still revered and Hall of Famers. But to me, Melo, he gets criticized unfairly, and if he had better support cast around him and better players, it would definitely make a huge difference. So that's why it's imperative. Phil Jackson needs to make a lot of changes this 2015 offseason. There's been talk about I always can't ever pronounce this guy's name. Is Goran Dragic? There we go. Goran Dragic on the trade block. He's obviously, from the reports, upset with Phoenix. Doesn't want to be there anymore because he's part of a 3-man guard set, along with Eric Bledsoe and Isaiah Thomas. So he wants to get out. The Knicks were one of the teams that he would go to because he would sign a long-term extension with them. The other two teams are the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. So there are some teams that are involved on him, but he's already told the teams that want to trade for him and have the best assets that he won't sign a contract with them. So they're basically, paying for a rental. He would be an excellent piece to have because he is a great point guard. They've had him at the 2 and 3 this year, which is kind of surprising to me. He's more of a point guard to me. He's a playmaker. He's got, he has a good shot too. Creates his own shot, but he makes others around him better. And let's say you get him on the team. Let's say you make a trade for him. Let's say you trade, Tim Hardaway Jr., a 2018 first-round pick, and another player. You try to trade Jose Calderon if you can, if the Suns would even do that. Try to do that and see if you can get him, along with signing one of the two big free agents on the market this year in Marc Gasol, the center, and LaMarcus Aldridge. If you get one of those guys, plus if the Knicks somehow miraculously get the number 1 pick this year, imagine they get Okafor. I mean, my goodness, then you're talking about a real team. I mean, that would be a scary team. And I think out of the Aldridge and Gasol players, I would rather have Gasol because I think it's more important to have a true legitimate center who is defensively sound. Now, they had that for a little bit with Chandler. Obviously, he wasn't the same presence that he was when he was with Dallas the first time around when he was the all-defensive player of the year. But, he still provided good defense, which the Knicks, sorely lacked, but not much offense. Whereas Gasol is a tremendous defender, but also can score. I mean, he'll score, 18 to 20 baskets, a night. To have him as a legitimate center, pair him with Melo, pair him with a pure point guard, pure meaning that he's a pass-first kind of guy, then you have complementary pieces you can fit around these guys. Then you have something there. And I think that this is going to be a big offseason for Phil where he really has to examine and look and see whether or not any of these guys fit into his system and not necessarily the triangle offense. I don't think that he's going to live and die by that. I think I could see Phil adjusting to it and, adapting to the newer times because let's face it, when he had the triangle offense, he had Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen on the team. He had Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal on the team. He had Kobe Bryant and Paul Gasol on the team. So he's always had big stars on his team. That's why it worked. It's not necessarily that he's a genius. I'm not taking anything away from Phil Jackson, but, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. He really had the tremendous players around him. When you have one guy who is just an offensive guy, it takes away from the triangle offense a little bit. Not to mention that Kobe and Michael are two guys that had that, that second drive that would do anything to win. They had that sixth sense just to will their team to win. And does Carmelo have that? Well, he hasn't really shown that he does. And not to take anything away from him, but it's one of those things that you want to see, if he can't do it, then you want to have someone on the team that can, that steps up, that takes some of that pressure away from him. Because Melo is such a good player, and you signed him to that max contract for a reason, because he is one of the best players in the league. Is he one of the best motivators? No. But can he lead a team to, aspirations of championship victories? I think so. I think he just has to have the right cast. I think he has the right supporting players around him. And at that point, I think it takes a lot of pressure off of him. And I think that he can go into the season well-rested mentally, knowing that, he'll go in there and answer questions still, but he doesn't have to be the guy that they're always going to go to first. If there's guys in the locker room like a Chauncey Billups or a Jason Kidd-esque guy that you can go to get, critical answers, that takes a lot off of Melo. So I definitely, highly, highly look forward to this 2015 offseason and see what Phil Jackson can do. And, he's got a big cachet. He's got the name. which means something. Madison Square Garden still means something. Playing in New York still means something. So that's another thing. I don't buy that guys don't want to come here because it's a losing atmosphere or James Dolan or blah blah blah. I don't buy that. It's still New York, still the Knicks, still one of the revered franchises in all of basketball. Just like I don't think that just because the Lakers have had a bad season or the Celtics have had a bad season that players aren't going to want to go there. I don't buy that. Those are three of the biggest franchises in basketball. So, of course, they're going to want to go there. And especially if the money's right. So, we'll see from there. The other news was Amari Stoudemire being bought out from his contract and is official. He signed with the Dallas Mavericks. So, good for him. I liked Amari when he was here with the Knicks. He brought excitement back to New York City when he signed here when, LeBron spurned us, unfortunately. We couldn't land Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh or any of those guys. So Amari was the first guy to come here and really establish that New York was back on the map. And hey, the first year and a half, he was spectacular. Him and Felton running the pick and rolls, and they had a very good. See, that was a balanced team. You had Wilson Chandler. You had Danilo Gallinari. You had Felton in shape. You had Amari. You had Mozgov. You had some nice pieces on that team that gelled very well together. And it's just surprising that, sometimes you just pair guys together and they just don't do well. So Melo and Stoudemire just weren't the best pair. And it happens. Sometimes, you have the LeBron, Wade, and Bosh where you can mesh all those egos together and sort it out. And even though they made it to the finals in their first year together and they lost, it shows you that they weren't all on the same page because that sometimes you didn't know if it was going to be Wade's turn to take the ball or LeBron's turn to take the ball or who was going to take that last shot. And then in the offseason, they kind of decided, who was going to be, the go-to guy, and that's when kind of LeBron took over, and Wade kind of, passed the mantle off to LeBron, even though it was pretty much Wade's team. But that's unselfish basketball when you could take egos and you can have guys that can step up and play their game and not worry about all the other outside stuff. And that's what the Knicks need to do, and that's what the Knicks need to establish. And I think they will. I really do. I think Phil Jackson's smart enough to know everything that I'm saying. I'm not a basketball genius. I think that Phil Jackson obviously knows a lot more than I do. And I think that he's going to definitely incorporate guys that will be able to facilitate his kind of game. Because he's been around locker rooms where there's been some hostility, obviously, with Shaq and Kobe. He's been around, championship teams that have had great success, all those Bulls teams and the Lakers teams. So he knows how to handle individual egos. And let's face it, the NBA has grown more and more egotistical over the last couple of years than ever before. And the style of basketball has changed so differently. You think about all the, the tough, defenders that you used to have back in the 90s and the bad boys, the Pistons and Dennis Rodman and, the Charles Oakleys of the world. It's so different now. I mean, you get called, there's flopping going on in basketball and, all these different, it's more of like you have to take an acting lesson to be in the NBA now to really sell fouls and God forbid you get, tapped. That's a foul automatically. I would like to see the refs let them play a little bit more and play a little bit more physical because that was the best kind of basketball back in the 90s when these guys would just let them play and let them play, with some physical intensity. So, it's going to be a big off season for the Knicks. We'll wait and see. Take a quick break, come back, and I'll finish up with some baseball talk. And again, if anything comes down with the NBA trade deadline, I'll definitely let you know. Pass it on. I know that the Brooklyn Nets and the T-Wolves were discussing a Kevin Garnett homecoming to Minnesota, who he played his first 12 years with. It'll be interesting to see if that happens. I know Andre Miller got traded. I saw. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I believe he got traded. He went to. Let's see. Where did he go? Oh, he went to Sacramento. So the Kings traded Ramon Sessions to Washington for Andre Miller. So. And Andre Miller now, also George Karl, having signed that 4-year deal with Sacramento, is familiar with Andre Miller from his Denver days. So, not a bad move. But so far, not a lot of activity going on. JaVale McGee goes to Philly. So, a couple moves so far, but nothing big so far yet. Nothing, no Ty Lawsons, no Dragic, no Wilson Chandlers, nobody like that going forward. So take a quick break, and we'll be right back, close out the show with some baseball talk right after this.